Welcome to this explainer. To kick things off, I want you to picture something for a second. The morning light is just starting to rise over an old Connecticut farm. And sitting there, quietly, right beside the weathered doorway of a century-old barn, is a pair of worn leather work boots. It's a pretty powerful visual, isn't it? Because while the names, the faces, and obviously the tools have completely changed over the last 4 centuries, the footsteps of the people wearing those boots, those remain. For more than 400 years, Connecticut's farmers have literally walked this exact same land, constantly asking themselves one massive, enduring question: how in the world do we keep this farm alive?
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got this incredible quote that really sets the stage and, honestly, subverts exactly what we usually think about historical agriculture. The question is not whether Connecticut farms have changed. The question is whether they have ever survived without changing. When we think of a historic farm, we kind of default to picturing something totally static, right? Like a quaint, unchanging snapshot of the past. But as you'll see in this explainer, the exact opposite is true. When it comes to agriculture, survival has always equaled evolution.
Section 1. The Myth of Standing Still and How We Misunderstand Agricultural History.
We all do this. We love to romanticize these old properties, imagining them as these perfect little museums frozen in time, completely immune to the outside world. But the reality? Successful historic farms are living, breathing examples of really thoughtful adaptation. The history of Connecticut agriculture is absolutely not a history of doing the exact same thing for 400 years. Actually, scratch that. It's a vibrant, active history of constant and sometimes really drastic shifts.
Section 2. 4 centuries of adaptation. A history of pivoting to survive. Let's rewind a bit. If we go back to a time before paved roads and electricity, 17th century colonial farms were these complete, self-sustaining economic powerhouses. Families weren't just planting crops, they were pressing cider, spinning wool, cutting timber, fixing their own tools. Literally every single available resource was leveraged to keep the farm alive. Then, by the 19th century, roads got better, the railroads arrived, and suddenly farms were connected to distant cities. Markets completely exploded. Grain gave way to dairy, which, surprisingly enough, gave way to tobacco. Fast forward to the 20th and 21st centuries, and you've got urbanization forcing this massive pivot into agritourism and community-supported agriculture. The takeaway here is that each generation had to actively respond to changing markets and entirely new existential threats.
So what does this all mean? Well, the absolutely crucial point is this: standing still meant losing the farm. I really want that to sink in. Adapting wasn't just some clever business strategy or a nice-to-have option. It was the absolute, non-negotiable, only way to keep the land in the family. A farm that refuses to adapt, well, it eventually just disappears.
Section 3. The 20th Century Pivot. Surviving Industrial Agriculture and Supermarkets.
The 20th century was pretty brutal. It brought enormous pressures. We're talking imported food, rapid mechanization, sky-high property taxes, and crazy urban expansion. This cocktail of pressures caused thousands of Connecticut farms to vanish forever. But the ones that survived? They did it by creatively pivoting and reconnecting directly with us, the consumers. Suddenly, you had roadside farm stands popping up everywhere, so families could grab fresh corn and peaches. Pick Your Own Orchards welcomed kids who, honestly, had probably never seen an apple tree up close. We saw the rise of CSAs, seasonal harvest festivals, and maple sugar houses. Farmers found entirely new ways to support their one enduring purpose, which was simply to remain farmers. Section 4. Connecticut Century Farms. Proof of concept across generations.
Now, these aren't just abstract concepts. Let's look at some real-world examples. Take Lyman Orchards, founded way back in 1741. To put that into perspective, they were operating before the United States was even a country. And today, they've evolved into this massive, diversified enterprise with markets and educational experiences. Then you've got Rose Orchards with roots stretching all the way back to the 17th century, repeatedly adapting its crops and markets just to survive. And Rosedale Farms, established in 1920, went from a traditional dairy and crop farm to this vibrant operation featuring vineyards, a bakery, sunflower fields, and even chef dinners. What's so amazing here is that the Connecticut Department of Agriculture recognizes and celebrates these as century farms, precisely because of these drastic changes. They didn't abandon agriculture, their adaptations are exactly what preserved it.
Let's zoom in on one specific case study, Red Clover Farms, to really bring this to life. Back in 1918, great-grandpa John Slinka established this humble dairy and produce farm in Seymour.
But as mid-century economic realities started to shift, the family boldly transitioned away from strictly dairy and moved into diversified produce and livestock. And today, the modern era brings artisan markets, farm tours, the whole shebang. The knowledge passed from hand to hand, season to season, and the land continued to be stewarded simply because they were willing to evolve.
Section 5. Heart of the community. Farms as gathering places. Let's shift our tone for a moment. If we move away from the pure economics of farming and look at the actual soul of farming, we see this incredible, enduring relationship between the land and the people. Historically, farms were never just isolated businesses. They were the glue of the community. Neighbors literally gathered together for harvests. Families pitched in for barn raisings. You had church socials happening right there in rural communities. Older generations passed down essential agricultural skills to the youth, and county fairs celebrated livestock. The farm was the absolute heart, the essential social and economic fabric of early Connecticut.
So when you drive by a farm today and see them hosting an artisan demonstration, a farm-to-table dinner, or an educational workshop, I want to make this crystal clear. These activities were not created to replace farming, they were developed to preserve it. These modern events aren't some trendy departure from agriculture, they are a brilliant modern continuation of this historic community bond. They're introducing entirely new generations to the land.
Section 6. Stewardship for the future. The one constant through 400 years.
Let's bring this narrative all the way back to those worn leather boots we pictured at the very start of our explainer. While the faces, the barns, the crops, and the tools change, stewardship is the one, single, unwavering constant. What is it? It's the profound responsibility to care for the soil, protect the water, preserve open space, and ensure the land's ability to endure for the next generation. True stewardship isn't about freezing a piece of land in amber exactly as it looked in 1850. It's about preserving its capacity to survive. Every single generation inherits way more than just dirt. They inherit the profound responsibility to keep that land viable.
Which leaves us with a highly relevant, honestly, pretty provocative question for our time. Will we preserve living farms or just photograph empty fields? Think about why this matters to all of us. When a family farm disappears, it's not just a business closing its doors. A landscape permanently changes. A community loses a piece of its identity. And generations of agricultural knowledge that is incredibly difficult to ever recover, is just gone forever. So will our future policies actually allow family farms to continue adapting, or will we regulate them into becoming mere memories, marked only by old stone walls and empty, quiet fields? Let's wrap things up with this final thought. The history of Connecticut agriculture is not the history of resisting change. It is the history of adapting so the land could be passed to the next generation. Imagine, right now, the morning sun shining brightly across those fields again. A child walks into view, and a brand new pair of small boots follows the exact same path through the grass. The footsteps continue. The story of family farming is ultimately a story of honoring the past while completely, enthusiastically embracing the future. And that is exactly how they're going to endure for generations yet to come. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this leaves you looking at your local historic farms in a whole new light.